Today, we're looking at really a blueprint for building the future, not just copying what exists, but creating something totally new. We're diving into a really foundational text for startups, and it makes this, well, frankly, shocking claim. It says, if you want to be the next Bill Gates, the last thing you should do is copy Bill Gates.
Right. That's the paradox at the heart of it. You learn from the greats by not following their exact path. Because if the next big thing is just, another version of Google or Facebook, it hasn't really learned the lesson. The truly iconic success has to be, as the source puts it, fresh and strange.
Okay, that's a high bar.
Yeah.
So how does this philosophy differentiate, between companies just tweaking things and those actually inventing? The source gives us these two fundamental ways progress happens.
Yeah, it sort of redefines progress. First, there's horizontal progress. That's going from one to n. Think globalization, taking something that works, a factory design, a business process, and just copying it everywhere. Easy enough to picture.
Scaling up what we already know how to do.
Exactly. Then there's vertical progress. This is the really hard stuff, going from 0 to 1. This is technology, and technology here means any new and better way of doing things, not just computers. So mass-producing typewriters, that's 1 to n. Inventing the word processor to replace them, that's 0 to 1.
It sounds a bit abstract, but the source makes it very concrete, very relevant for you, the listener. It connects it to, well, global stability.
That's the really critical point. If the world only focuses on spreading old ways, just globalization, it's unsustainable. We can't just copy existing tech everywhere. I mean, imagine if hundreds of millions of households in, say, India suddenly adopted current American consumption patterns, energy use, the environmental impact, the resource trait. It would be catastrophic. So the only way globalization actually works, the only way it's enriching and not devastating, is if we also have continuous 0 to 1 breakthroughs. New energy, new ways to make things.
Okay, so if the future really depends on inventing genuinely new stuff, you can't think like everyone else. You need a different filter. How do you even start thinking 0 to 1?
You start with this fundamental question, sort of a test for original thought. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? And a good answer isn't just, picking a side in some common debate. It has to run counter to a really widespread belief. That's kind of the first step to finding one of these necessary secrets the world needs.
Which leads us right into the business side of this. Because if you're building a company, the standard thinking, the popular belief is that competition is good, healthy even. But this flips that completely, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The business version of that contrarian question becomes, what valuable company is nobody building? And the goal isn't just creating value. Lots of companies do that. It's about building something unique enough that you can actually capture some of that value you create.
Hold on, monopoly. Isn't that like a really loaded term? It sounds exploitative, bad for consumers. Are we really saying the goal should be to stop competition?
That is precisely the contrarian truth the source lays out. From an economic standpoint, perfect competition is actually terrible for businesses. It drives profits down to 0. It forces companies into this brutal, ruthless fight for survival. I mean, look at the U.S. airline industry. They create massive value, flying millions daily. Yet back in 2012, their average profit per passenger was just 37 cents. That's a cutthroat market. Financially, competition is, well, kind of for losers.
Wow. Okay, contrast that with the alternative goal.
Yeah.
The creative monopoly.
Right. A creative monopoly is presented as the ideal state for a business. It earns significant profits for years, but those profits are the reward for creating something new. New abundance, a better product that didn't exist before. Think Google. It's worth vastly more than all U.S. airlines combined because it captures a significant chunk of its revenue, like 21% as profit. It basically owns search. It's ironic, right? Capitalism is about accumulating capital, but perfect competition competes all the capital away.
And because the stakes, the profit stakes, are so high, companies actually have a big incentive to lie about their market position. This part's fascinating. How do they pull that off?
There are two main ways, two lies. First, the monopoly lie. Monopolies pretend they have tons of competition to avoid regulatory heat. Google, for instance, might frame itself as just a tiny player in the enormous global advertising market, rather than the absolute giant it is in search advertising.
Okay, so they broaden the definition to look smaller. And the competitive lie.
That's the flip side. Companies stuck in intense competition define their market super narrowly to sound unique. If someone opens a restaurant and calls it the only authentic British pie shop in downtown Palo Alto, they might technically be right, but their real market is just restaurants in Palo Alto. which is incredibly competitive. It's a dangerous self-delusion.
This really turns a lot of standard business advice on its head, especially the stuff that came out after the dot-com bust around 2000. Everyone started saying, make small incremental changes, stay lean, be flexible.
Exactly. And the source argues pretty forcefully that almost all those post-crash lessons are wrong, or at least misleading if you want 0 to 1. The opposite principles are probably closer to the truth. It's better to risk being bold than trivial. A bad plan is often better than no plan at all. Competitive markets kill profits. And this one's key sales matters just as much as the product itself.
Okay, let's shift to making these things last. It's not enough to just reach a monopoly position. It needs to be durable, what the source calls the last mover advantage.
Precisely. A great business isn't measured by today's revenue numbers. It's measured by its potential to generate huge cash flows way out into the future. That's why, a company like Twitter, even when it was losing money around its IPO, got valued in the billions. Investors were betting on future monopoly profits, maybe 10 years down the line. Contract that with, say, a traditional media company. Maybe it has more revenue now, but its value is much lower because people don't see strong long-term cash flows.
So building that durability, that lasting edge, it requires specific ingredients, right? Built in from the start. What are the pillars of a durable monopoly?
The source identifies 4 key characteristics. First, and maybe most critical, is proprietary technology. And the rule of thumb here is strict. Your tech needs to be at least 10 times better than the closest alternative. Anything less is just incremental.
Why 10x? That seems like a huge leap.
Because marginal improvements are hard to sell, customers might not even notice, and they're usually easy for competitors to copy. 10x creates a clear, undeniable advantage.
Okay, give us an example of 10x.
PayPal on eBay. It was maybe 10 times faster and easier than mailing a check, which took, 7 to 10 days? Big difference. Or Amazon starting out, it offered maybe 10 times the selection of books compared to a physical bookstore. Solved a real problem instantly.
Makes sense. Okay, number 2 is crucial for tech. Network effects.
Yeah, the classic definition. The product becomes more useful as more people use it, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. But here's the twist, the paradox. To get a network effect going, you must start super small. You need to dominate a tiny, specific market first. Facebook didn't launch to the world, it launched just for Harvard students. If you go too broad too fast, the network effect nearly takes hold. It's too diluted.
Right, you need that initial density, which kind of feeds into the third point, doesn't it? Making the monopoly stronger as it scales.
Economies of scale. Yep. Monopolies naturally get stronger as they grow. Their fixed costs like R&D, engineering talent, get spread over a much larger volume of sales. This is super obvious for software companies, right? The cost of making one more copy of the software is practically zero. So every new customer adds almost pure profit.
And the fourth characteristic, branding.
Branding, yeah. But, and this is important, it has to be built on substance. Apple's brand works because it reinforces everything else.
Right.
Their proprietary tech, their design, their scale, the network effect of the App Store, just having a cool logo or slick offices, surface level stuff, that's not a durable advantage. It's just aesthetics without the underlying economic power.
This really underlines that scaling needs a strategy. You can't just jump into the biggest market on day one.
Absolutely not. Start small, dominate a niche, then expand carefully. PayPal didn't target all online payments initially. They focused laser-like on eBay power sellers, just a few thousand people who desperately needed what they offered. Once they owned that niche, then they could scale up. Amazon's the classic story, right? Books first, nail that. Then CDs and videos, then electronics, gradually expanding into adjacent markets until, poof, the everything store.
That kind of deliberate step-by-step approach ties into a bigger idea in the source material about how we think about the future itself. This split between definite and indefinite views.
Right. It's a fascinating framework. The definite view believes the future can be known and shaped. Think definite optimism. We can plan and build a specific, better future. Historically, this was the dominant view during periods of great progress, the Apollo program, the Empire State Building. Even huge, ambitious infrastructure plans, like the rubber plan for California back in the 50s, people had bold, concrete plans.
But today, it feels like the indefinite view is more common.
Very much so, especially indefinite optimism. This is the belief that the future will be better, but we don't really know how. So the best strategy is just options. Keep your options open. Don't commit too strongly to one path. You see it everywhere. Think of high-achieving students building these incredibly diverse resumes, coding, debate, volunteering, music, getting ready for, well, nothing in particular. Finance kind of embodies this indefinite approach too. Diversification, hedging, It's all about managing uncertainty rather than forging a specific path.
So the indefinite person takes 5 different online courses, just in case one is useful, while the definite person spends 5 years mastering one specific, challenging skill set they believe will shape the future.
That's a great way to put it. Singular, focused effort versus broad hedging. And the math, according to the source, strongly favors focus, especially in fields driven by outliers. This comes down to the power law.
Right, the idea that outcomes aren't evenly distributed. A small number of things account for the vast majority of results, like the 80-20 rule, but often more extreme. How does this play out in startups and investing?
It's incredibly stark in venture capital. The data shows that in a successful VC fund, the single best investment often returns more money than all the other investments combined. Think Founders Fund. Their early bets on Facebook and Palantir basically made the entire fund. The implication is huge. If you're an investor or an entrepreneur, diversification might actually be the wrong strategy. You need to find and back that one company or build that one company that has the potential to be massively, disproportionately successful. Singular focus is required.
But hang on, isn't that incredibly risky advice? For every Palantir, there must be hundreds, thousands of founders who bet everything on one big idea and failed. Isn't diversification just sensible?
It's sensible if you're aiming for incremental progress, for 1 to n. If you're just trying to capture existing value in a competitive market, sure, hedge your bets. But if you're genuinely trying for 0 to 1, trying to create something radically new and capture that value, well, the source argues you can't afford to diversify your efforts. Hedging protects you from total failure, but it also prevents overwhelming success. If the math shows one bet could dwarf all others, you have to pour everything into making that bet work. And often, that bet is based on finding something hidden. A secret.
Secrets. Okay, not like government secrets, but undiscovered opportunities. How do you distinguish a real secret from just a hard problem or a mystery?
Good distinction. A mystery is something fundamentally unknowable, like maybe the ultimate nature of consciousness. Trying to solve a mystery is likely a waste of time. A secret in this context is an important truth that is unknown but doable. It's valuable, people haven't figured it out yet, but it's actually possible to discover or build.
So where should we be looking for these secrets?
Often places that matter a lot but haven't been fully explored or institutionalized. Areas where conventional thinking hasn't tread. The source uses the example of nutrition. It affects literally everyone, every day. Yet, arguably, we know less about basic human nutrition than we do about distant galaxies. Why? Maybe because it's complex. Maybe it hasn't attracted the same kind of focused institutional effort. That gap, important, underexplored, maybe unconventional, that's fertile ground for secrets.
And the idea is that the best companies are essentially built around uncovering and exploiting one of these secrets, which brings us to the actual foundation of the company. You can have a great secret, but if you mess up the start,
It's probably doomed. This is what the source calls Thiel's law. A startup messed up at the foundation cannot be fixed. Getting the initial setup wrong, the co-founders, the board, the core mission, these things are incredibly hard to change later on, like trying to fix fundamental flaws in a country's constitution decades later.
Yeah.
You've got to get the very first decisions right, and that starts with the team.
So picking co-founders, it's not just about skills.
It's much deeper. It's almost like a marriage. The source emphasizes that founders must share a prehistory. They need to know each other well, have worked together, trust each other deeply before starting the company. Just meeting someone at a networking event who seems smart and deciding to launch, that relationship probably lacks the resilience needed for the insane pressures of a 0 to 1 startup.
and this need for alignment carries over into things like the board and how people are paid.
Absolutely. Keep the board small. 3 members is often ideal. 5, max, unless you're already public. Big boards tend towards dysfunction and indecision. And compensation. This is controversial but key. Keep cash salaries low, especially for the CEO. Maybe $150,000 max, according to the source. Why? Because it forces everyone to focus on the long-term value, on making the equity worth something huge, rather than just protecting their comfortable salary in the short term. It ensures alignment with the 0 to 1 mission.
This really sheds light on things like the PayPal mafia, all those early employees who went on to found other massive companies. It wasn't just that they were smart individuals.
It was the culture, a unique, almost tribal culture. They weren't just hiring the technically best engineers. They were hiring people who were obsessed with the specific mission, creating a new digital currency. People who genuinely liked working intensely together. It was more than just professionalism. It was a shared conspiracy to change the world, built on those strong initial relationships.
That singular focus, that mission, it leads us to the final piece. The one that, let's be honest, a lot of techno founders, engineers, they kind of hate thinking about. Distribution, sales, marketing. There's this bias, right? If you build a great product, they will come.
The field of dreams fallacy. And yeah, it's probably the single biggest reason why technically brilliant products fail. The data suggests that most startup failures aren't due to a bad product, they're due to bad distribution. Failing at sales, marketing, getting the product to customers. Distribution isn't glamour, it's hard work, but it's absolutely essential. It's everything involved in actually selling the product.
Okay, so what's the core principle? How do you know if your distribution is working?
It really boils down to one critical metric. Your customer lifetime value, or CLV, has to be higher than your customer acquisition cost. Can't they?
So basically, the total profit you expect to make from a customer over their entire relationship with you, that needs to be more than what it cost you to get them in the door in the first place.
Exactly. If it costs you $100 to acquire a customer, and they only ever generate $90 in profit for you, your business model is broken. Doesn't matter how cool the product is.
And just like with focus in general, there's a power law here too, for distribution channels.
Yes. Critically, most businesses fail because they can't get any distribution channel to work effectively. They dabble in a bunch of things: ads, content, sales, and master none of them. The key insight is, you usually only need to find one channel that works really well for your specific product and market. Nail that one channel.
Can you give some examples of nailing that one channel?
Sure. For really big, expensive products like selling multi-million-dollar software systems or, rockets, you need complex sales. This often involves the CEO directly. You're making maybe just a few huge sales per year. Think Palantir selling to government agencies or SpaceX selling launches. For products in, say, the $10,000 to $100,000 range, you might rely on personal sales, a dedicated sales team building relationships. Box is a good example. They started by personally selling their cloud storage to specific departments, like the Stanford Sleep Clinic, proving the value, then scaling up their sales team to go after bigger enterprise deals. Finding and then dominating that one right channel was key.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this all up. This journey from just copying one to end to true creation 0 to 1, it demands rejecting the default mode of competition.
Right, embracing the goal of building a durable, creative monopoly based on things like 10x technology and network effects.
Committing to a definite singular plan instead of just collecting options.
Building that plan on a rock-solid foundation, especially the founding team and culture.
And finally, never underestimating the hard, unglamorous work of mastering distribution, nailing that one key channel.
And if you do all that, if you actually plan and commit and build with intentions,
You gain real agency. You're not just subject to chance.
Exactly. The success of something truly ambitious isn't about luck, not primarily. It's about design, about planning, about execution. It means acting as if the future is something you can shape. Which leads to the final thought, maybe the most empowering takeaway from this whole deep dive. You are not a lottery ticket.